You'll be surprised how many people actually do not have an emergency fund, and they are just one emergency away from a financial crisis. And even worse, if they lost their job today, they will be in no position to cover their basic expenses. And that is a scary way to live. That's why in today's video, I want to show you how you can build a 6-month emergency fund from scratch. When you are building your 6-month emergency fund, the first thing that you need to do is to calculate your survival number. And this is where a lot of people go wrong because they think this is about them replacing their salary. No, this is not about you replacing your salary. This is you looking at your budget and adding up all the items or all the things that you need for you to survive. Not the wants, not the nice to haves, but what actually you need to function as a human being. You add all of this up and you get a number. And let's say the number that you get is 12,000. Then you take that 12,000 and you multiply it by 6 months and you get a 72,000. That is your emergency fund that you need for 6 months. You will be able to survive for 6 months if you have a 72,000 because your needs are 12,000 a month. So that becomes your target for your emergency fund. And a lot of people will calculate this or add this up and realize, wow, this is actually maybe 30 or 40% less than you thought. And that is because a lot of people are trying to replace their salary. They are not looking at what they actually need for survival. If you start building an emergency fund where you are looking at salary, you will get discouraged because obviously the amount will be much higher than it's supposed to be. And now that we have calculated our survival number, the next thing that we want to do is work on a mini goal. You see, when you see our example of the 72,000, that looks like it's a big amount of money or it's a large sum of money. But for you to actually gain momentum in building up your emergency fund, you can then set mini goals or mini targets within your bigger target of the 72,000 as per our example. So instead of immediately aiming for that 6 months emergency fund, you can create a mini goal of targeting 2 months of that 6 months. Then in this case, you are no longer looking at a 72,000, you are now looking at a 24,000. And when you look at that 24,000, it's less overwhelming. It's less stressful. It looks like a smaller mountain that you can easily climb. And once you have ticked it off, you will be so motivated to keep going. So once you tick off the first 2 months, then you can aim for the next 2 months and the next 2 months. And then next thing you know, you are done with your 6 months. Having that 24,000, for instance, now for the 2 months, it keeps you out of debt. If an emergency comes, you have that 24,000 and you are able to solve it. Hopefully it fits within that amount. But the point remains, apart from it motivating you to keep going and you having less anxiety and being less overwhelmed, you stay out of debt. You are not calling people to borrow. You are not calling in favors because you at least have your 2 months of emergency savings that are put aside while you are still working towards your bigger goal of the 6 months, which is the 72,000. Now that we have calculated our survival number and we have a mini goal that we set for ourselves, it's time to choose an account. And here is where 90% of the people fail. You want your emergency fund to be in an account that is accessible within 24 to 48 hours. You also want an account that is low risk or at least without any risk. And you want an account that is able to pay you interest on your emergency fund. Imagine having that 72,000 just sitting in an account without any interest. And maybe you don't get an emergency in the whole year. It just sits there for 12 months doing nothing. You want an account that is either on par with inflation in terms of the interest they are giving you, or they are slightly above inflation. And there are accounts that are able to give you that. So you just need to shop around and look at high yield savings account or high yield call accounts or high yield money market accounts, whatever the account is called. What you are looking for is 3 key things: accessibility in a short period of time. It's better to have it within 48 hours. 24 to 48 hours. You want it to be low risk. You don't want to lose your money, and you want it to be able to give you interest either on par or above inflation. You don't want your money to sit in an account that is giving you 1%. At least go with one that is giving you 5 or 7 or 8. There are some accounts that are able to give you that. And while we are talking about accounts, avoid at all costs to put your emergency fund into the stock market. The stock market is not designed to keep your money safe. It's designed to grow your money, and that growth comes with volatility, of which maybe the day you need to use that money for emergency, the stock market has gone down and your money is no longer 72,000. Maybe you'll find that it's at 42. So the stock market, don't put your emergency fund. Consider safer, more accessible options that are able to give you good interest. And if you are somebody who keeps dipping into your emergency fund or dipping into your savings, consider opening your account for your emergency fund with a separate bank from your usual day-to-day bank. That way, you will not be accessing that money so easily. And you can also decide not to have the app of that bank so that on your phone you are not able to see the account. Also, you can avoid having a card for that account and only work with transferring the money when it's needed. But also, if it's with your bank and the account is appearing on your banking app, if your app allows, just hide that account from your banking app. Then you don't have to see it every time you are logging into your banking app. That way, if you keep it out of sight, then you'll be able to really keep it out of your mind, and it becomes less likely for you to try and dip into that account, because we know not everybody is that disciplined. We all have our own flaws when it comes to managing money. But if you know yourself very well and you know what could work and what couldn't work for you, you really put everything in place to avoid you from tapping into your emergency fund. The next thing that we are doing when it comes to our emergency fund is deciding on the timeline. Yes, now you have your survival number, you have set a mini goal, you have chosen your account. Now you want to set a timeline. How long will it take me to build up this fund? With our example of a 72,000 emergency fund over 6 months, you can then decide, am I able to afford to build my emergency fund within 12 months, which then I'll be giving or I'll be contributing 6,000 every month towards my emergency fund? Or am I only able to afford contributing 3,000 a month, and then that will take me 24 months? Or can I only do 1.5? And of course, the number of months keeps increasing, the lower the amount. Look at your own financial situation. Our financial situations are different from person to person. Look at your individual finances and decide on an amount that is realistic for you, that is comfortable for you. You are not starving at home because now you are building an emergency fund, and you are able to actually sustain the payments that you are making monthly to build up your emergency fund. It doesn't help the first and second month you are giving 10,000 and then later on you are giving 1,000. You need to set a realistic target for your emergency fund. How much am I comfortably and realistically able to contribute every single month to my emergency fund? And you stick to that and you keep going. And now that we have set our timeline on how long it will take us to get there, it's now time to find the money. This is now your scavenger phase. For the next few months, you are going to scavenge money or look for money within your budget and from all your other sources that you are getting your money from. And this is the key part. It's good to set a target and to have a goal, but to put it into practice is where a lot of people actually end up not doing so well. So here is some of the ideas or the things that you can do to find money within your budget. The first thing here on finding the money is to pay yourself first. I'm sure you have heard that a lot of times when it comes to personal finances. Pay yourself first. The day after payday, transfer your contribution towards your emergency fund directly to your chosen account. If on our example you decide you want to build yours within 12 months, that's 72,000. That means every single month, the day after payday, you transfer 6,000 from the account where your salary is coming in to the account you chose for your emergency fund. So that is paying yourself first, so that before anything else happens, you have taken care of your emergency fund. The second thing that you do is setting a rule for any windfall money that you are getting. 100% of money that you did not have before goes straight to your emergency fund. So if you get a tax refund today, it goes to your emergency fund. If your cousin who owed you money from 5 years ago pays you back that 5,000, goes to your emergency fund. If you get a bonus or a 13th check, emergency fund. And you might say, no, but Liz, I need that money. You were surviving so well without that money before. So you can survive without it after you have put it in your emergency fund. So any windfall money that comes your way, whether it's debt that you had forgotten about, whether it's your bonus, whether it's a tax refund, whatever it is that you get, whether it's a gift, put that money in your emergency fund. Then we come to the juicy part that a lot of people don't actually like, and that is cutting and reducing expenses within your budget. And here you really are able to find a lot of money. Let's say, for instance, you were spending 1,000 on eating out every single month, and that is conservative. Then you cut that in half. Then that 500 goes to your emergency fund. If you have a cleaning person who comes every single week, we cut that into half. Whatever amount, if you were giving them a 300 every time they came to clean, that is a 600 already. We are channeling to the emergency fund. If you are somebody who is shopping for clothing every single month, you buy yourself something new, we are completely putting a pause on that. Subscriptions, we are downgrading. Some of them we are eliminating. And if you really go through your budget and really go to the different categories and all the line items where you can potentially reduce, you will find that you have already maybe a 3,000 or even a 4,000 from your existing budget that you can redirect from other areas of that budget towards your emergency fund. And once your emergency fund is fully funded, you can go back to doing your things the way you were doing them before. But when we keep growing financially, by the time you are done with your 6 months emergency fund, you realize that no, I can't go back spending that amount of money on the other things. I'll now channel this 4,000 or 3,000 towards my investments. And that is how we grow, and it's how we evolve. Because once you know better and you start practicing and getting used to a certain lifestyle, you might not even want to go back there where you are shopping for clothing every month, where you are spending so much money on takeouts, on subscriptions, on alcohol and all these kinds of things. Because sometimes we think we need those things, but when you just decide to do away with it for a few months, you realize I never actually needed this. And then the next thing that we do with our emergency fund is to not touch it and only use it for emergencies. Here is where you define what is an emergency for me. Is it a car breakdown? Is it a medical expense? Is it me losing my job? Is it my family calling saying they want A, B, C, D? What is an emergency? And once you have defined that, stick to that. Only spend this money if it's an emergency according to your definition of emergency. Because my definition of emergency and yours, it is different. We have different lifestyles. We have different things that we value. We have different needs. So decide for yourself what is an emergency and be very strict with yourself. Only access your emergency fund if one or more of those things have happened. And I know when it comes to our families, we tend to feel bad quickly when they tell us something is happening and they want money. But before you give away your emergency fund, just know that if something happens to you before you recover that money or before you are able to build it up, it will be you who needs to be saved. But now the question is, do you have people who can save you? Or are you just on your own? Once you give away your emergency fund, you are left without anything and you don't have people to help you. Think first before you run to save others, because you yourself might need saving and there will be no one to actually save you. And then the last part of building our emergency fund is to adjust your emergency fund as your life is changing. Our lives keep changing. The things that you needed last year and the things that you need this year might not be the same. The stages of our lives are also changing. So as our lives are changing, we need to adjust our emergency fund. When you move to a new location or a new house, whether you are buying or whether you are renting, chances are your expenses have gone up, so you adjust. When you have a child, you adjust. When you get married, now you are a 2-people household, you adjust. So those key life changes that are happening in your life, you adjust your emergency fund accordingly. So whether things are changing for the positive or they are changing in a negative way, always assess and relook at your emergency fund to see whether it's still speaking to those needs and those necessities that you really need in your life. Otherwise, you adjust as needed. And I have to say, having an emergency fund is like you buying or maintaining your dignity. You need to be in a position as an adult to be able to solve your own problems without going in debt and without calling people for help. It's good to lean on people for help, and a lot of times people are willing to help, but don't make it a consistent thing that every time you have a problem, other people must come in and rescue you. People get tired. You start bringing tension into your relationships because you are always asking for financial support. So have your emergency fund so that you can stay out of debt. You can keep your relationships without having to argue about money and always seeking support and people getting tired of you. And your emergency fund also just allows you to make better decisions for yourself. You can replace your laptop when it stops working because that is what allows you to make money. If it's not insured, of course. You are able to leave a toxic work environment because you know I'll be able to survive for at least 6 months. You can even leave a bad relationship where you are not treated well and you know you are able to cover yourself without having to worry about being dependent on this person. Because yes, there are people who are dependent on a spouse or a long-term partner, but if things are not working out but you have your emergency fund, you can walk away and you can survive for those 6 months while you are figuring out how life is going to be for you without this person. So please, let's keep our dignity and really just have our emergency funds in place. So with that said, I hope you do have an emergency fund already, and maybe you are just building on it so that you can expand it further. But if you do not already have one, please start your emergency fund today. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Tell your family members. Every person needs to have some sort of emergency fund. Depending on their income level, depending on their needs. For one person is 1,000. For one person is 20,000. For another person is 72,000. It doesn't matter as long as at whatever level a person is finding themselves, they have something to fall back on. So that is all for today. I'll see you in the next video.